What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of Ball Talk with Boyd. I am Spencer Boyd, your host of this wonderful new podcast. And man, do I have a special episode for you guys this week. You know, the draft season's approaching, and we are so excited and fired up. I had to call one of the best ball knowers, ball knowledge guys I know, Mr. Jalen Cox. Give it up for Jalen Cox. Come
Well,
on.
appreciate it, boss. Appreciate it, boss. You're hyping me up a little too much, but I appreciate the confidence.
There we go, man. Absolutely, man. You got these takes and all this ball knowledge that I was like, I got to get the man on the podcast, man. We got some good stuff to cover.
Well, I appreciate it. Excited to talk some ball, man. Let's do it.
So you want to give the people a little bit of background about yourself and your football and sports
Yeah,
background?
yeah, sure. So, first off, I've been playing football, I was playing football for 20 years almost. I started when I was not 20, 17 years. I started when I was like 6 years old, and I played all the way up through college till I was like 23. Played at DePaul University, very small D3 school in Greencastle. I was never the like super athlete by any means. I'm like 5'11". I was like 300 pounds playing offensive line. So I obviously knew I was never going pro or nothing. But even like when I was younger too, I was never the best player on the team. So I dialed in a lot, like cerebrally. And so I have a real, like, my biggest connection with football is never about athleticism. I like looking at what they know about football and how, the technique and things like that. I think my best, like most confidence as far as ball knowledge is probably offensive lineman, just because I know the most about it. I've
Yeah.
got a couple guys to talk about today, but I mean, yeah, I had a lot of experience playing. Looking forward to getting to coaching here soon as well. But
Yes, sir.
uh, got a lot more into college football since I stopped playing it too.
Yeah.
I've been actually
Having
because
a
I
lot
was
more
playing
time
on
to like
Saturdays.
actually sit down and yeah, there we
Yeah, I
go.
mean, I was always playing on Saturdays. It took up most of the day, so I'd be lucky to
Yeah.
catch like an SEC night game or something. But nowadays, I've honestly started liking college ball sometimes more than the NFL even. So, um, but I've always been a big draft guy. It like the second the off season started, I'd be dialing in like in high school, especially on the draft and stuff. So I feel
Yeah.
like I'm pretty confident about knowing what teams think. I
Yeah.
guess.
And how
It,
their thought process and what they're
yeah,
looking for and
right,
everything.
right, and like what
Yeah.
positions at what spots and like value and things like that. And
Yeah.
I mean, you think Jimmy Johnson's trade, like draft trade things, even like the draft board that he created back in the '90s and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I agree, man. I feel like when I was in high school, or it was probably early high school, freshman year, and I always knew about the draft and stuff, but it was around freshman year when I started like actually watching. This is when ESPN had like all the guys at ESPN, the
Right.
best analysts and stuff, and all the people we grew up with. And I started watching those a little bit more, and I was watching how they were covering the offseason in the NFL so much. And I'm like, what are we talking about? I'm watching NBA and MLB right now. What are we talking about the NFL for? And I'm listening to them talk about all these different things coming up and the trade deadline and the combine and all the pro days and oh, we have live footage coming from the Ohio State Pro Day. And I'm like, what are they
Who
even
cares?
talking? Yeah. I'm like, what are you even talking about? And then all of a sudden, I'm tuning into this stuff. I started watching the combine and all that when I was in high school, and I agree, man. It's such a football is such a unique sport in the sense that it really never stops. You can say that about every sport, but
Right.
when we say that about football, especially, it's a constant, never-ending cycle with that football the game.
It's crazy how much stock they put in things when people dudes are running in spandex and Under Armour. It's wild.
Yeah,
One
yeah.
like 4 seconds of your life can change it so dramatically. It's
Yep, or
insane.
1 inch shorter in your
Right.
arms, or just you come in 5 pounds lighter than you were supposed to.
Yeah.
It's a game changer. It is a game changer.
And the time that these dudes put into preparing, like the second their season ends, it's preparing for you're not. It's like it's an interview, and it's
Yeah,
crazy.
it is.
But anyways, I'll let you start whatever you want to cover first,
Yeah,
man.
so we have a good list of a lot of topics to talk about for this upcoming draft, 2026, man. I have a feeling that this is going to be one of those draft classes that we're seeing on Instagram and stuff where they're comparing it to like the 2020 class and stuff. Because I feel like, 2020, of course, that was more like, they had the QBs, but they had a lot of great talent in that 2020 draft with receivers and defensive ends and all that. And I feel like with this year, we have some dogs on the defensive line that we're going to be talking about for a long time. And I feel like the secondary is also pretty deep this year. So I have a feeling that this is going to be a defensive heavy draft this year. What are you feeling?
I like that. It's kind of the opposite of 2 years ago when the first
Yeah.
13 picks were all offense until the Colts took Latu at 14.
Yeah.
I think that it's one of those drafts where maybe you're not as excited about the guys like 1 through 10,
Yeah.
whereas guys 20 through 60, you don't know. Any of those guys can fall anywhere, especially near the end of that first round. But defensively, they're definitely talking about defensive line, and I really am big on the interior line this year, especially in like the early second, late second area. Interior defensive line, again, is also one of those where you're not going to have a super high-end talented guy, but there's a lot of guys that you can see day 2, day 3 that could be great contributors as well. Of course, they're always going to talk about the quarterbacks and a weaker quarterback draft outside of them. But I'm really high on the amount, and this seems to be a big case in a lot of drafts recently, the receivers. It's the most deep position in football. Every athlete in high school, if you play football, you want to be a receiver. It's like being...
It's the flashy thing.
It's
like being a point guard. Everybody wants to be a point guard when they're growing up.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So I think there's just a flood of talent there. Because if you know you're a great athlete and you're playing football, you're going to want to be a receiver, and you're training to be a receiver. But I think like you. I think there's a lot more depth on defense than on offense this year. But really big on the interior line and receivers.
Okay. So let's go into our little like draft sleepers, low key guys. So give me your first guy, and then we'll talk about him a little bit, and then I got a few guys too.
You want to talk big sleepers or guys that you feel are just a little underrated? Because I've got
Give me some underrated sleepers.
Mm-hmm. Well, first one I'm going with, and he is not. I'm not even really a sleeper anymore. But if you had talked about this guy 2 months ago, not as much. I've got Monroe Freeling.
Yeah.
Offensive tackle. Biggest thing with him, he was a contributor on Georgia's offensive line. Obviously one of the best teams in the country for 3 years.
Yeah.
Starter the last 2, and he's just so consistent. He's got the size that you want. He's a huge frame. He's listed 6'7", maybe a little light right now at 315.
Yeah.
For NFL standards, obviously you can stick that in college, but
they can fix that real quick. They're not too worried
he'll
about
go
that
into
weight.
Camp. No matter where he goes, he's going to go into camp. He'll probably
absolutely
measure in week 1 325. I don't think that'll be an issue whatsoever, but he moves so well, and he really snaps out of his stance. He's got the length. Once he gets his arms on you, you might be cooked. He still needs to work on run blocking, but when you're at 6'7", it's so hard, and that's not a skill that comes easy to get under guys. But really big on him. I think a team's going to take a shot on him a lot too, because there's not many true left tackles in this draft, whereas that's where he's going to be. I mean, even like Maui Noah is the other guy that I'm going to talk about on the offensive line that I really, really like, but there's talks about him going inside where no team's going to move Monroe Freeling inside. So if you're a really tackle-needy team, I wouldn't be surprised to see him being the second offensive lineman off the board.
Yeah. I could see that. I haven't watched a ton of his tape, but just his measurements alone and being at Georgia and a contributor at Georgia reminds me a lot of Amarius Mims when the Bengals drafted him. And that was, 2 years ago now? And he came in, really struggled with that pass blocking. But again, with the run blocking. But again, he's 6'7", 300-some pounds, and it didn't come naturally for him. And now he is excelling at all areas of being a nice, solid right tackle for the Bengals. So I could really see Monroe being one of those guys that just, give him a little second, let him start all season, and man, next year he'll be one of the top 4 tackles in football. I could see it.
100%.
Yeah,
Then
one of my guys that I have under my like sleepers, underrated guys. I have a receiver from Texas Tech, Reggie Virgil. He's kind of in like that late second, third round areas in a lot of people's um, projections and mocks right now. But I got a chance to see him play when he was at Miami. I was there scouting some of their guys for the All-Star game that I worked for, and he was on my list because he was draft eligible last year and then transferred using extra year. So I was checking him out last year, and man, I was looking at him, and he looked the part. And that's one of the biggest things is, when you see these guys, do they really look the part of an NFL player? Because there's every now and then there's a guy that he doesn't look the part, and he gets in and he makes an impact and stuff. But most of the time, you're looking at a receiver, if he's 5'10", 180 pounds, you're like, I don't know, man. You're gonna have to really show me some slot work and some special teams work to get that done.
right.
I'm looking at this Reggie guy. I'm watching him high point the balls during warm up. I'm watching his release off the line of scrimmage, and man, he looked really good. And he had a really good year at Texas Tech. He led the team in receptions, and so he made that jump from the MAC to the Big 12 and still excelled. So that was my biggest thing is when I was watching him at Miami. Is this? He's at Miami. He's playing in the MAC. How is he going to match up against these big time
Right.
comparative DBs? And he held his own very, very well at Texas Tech. So that's somebody that I feel like could be a really good target for a team that really just needs a backup, ready to go receiver that can develop over a year or so and do some special teams work and all that stuff.
Yeah, I love that you're able to get that insight too. Like when you see someone in person, it's a lot different than just watching it on tape.
Oh man, yeah.
But it's funny you say that. Like when you sometimes you see a guy and he just doesn't have the it factor, even though he might have like the stats. The other side of things too, it could be the exact opposite, where maybe he doesn't have the stats, but then you see him in person, you're like, man, that's just a football player.
Yep.
So
yep. That's a tricky thing, though, because then you get. So I'm still a believer in Shamar Stewart with the Cincinnati Bengals, but that's a situation where you're looking at a guy that he's got freak numbers physically, and he looks the part, but you're like, where's the numbers at? Where are the stats at? And then this year it was a struggle for him, but I feel like there's a lot of progress to be had. But I agree, man. It's just the way you look at it it's really tough because you kind of picking your own poison or not at all. There's no in the middle.
Well, I'm going to continue my offensive line streak here. Kind of the exact opposite of Monroe Freeling with all of his experience and just technique. I'm looking at Max Ionacher from Arizona State. 6'6", 321, and I just love this guy's story, man. He didn't even play football until he went to junior college in Los Angeles. Grew up in Nigeria and was playing soccer. And once his family moved to Los Angeles, he started playing basketball. Then played 2 years at junior college, and obviously went to Arizona State. And this guy does not have the he's very lean, kind of like the exact opposite of like Caden Proctor, who I'm going to talk about earlier, where you just see him, he's just a beefy, Max Ionacher is kind of the exact opposite, and he moves so well and has such good feet with that soccer and football background, where I could see a situation not as extreme, but I look at the Eagles' offensive line and how their coaches, and they take risks on guys and maybe don't have the experience.
Yeah.
And then they have the build, though, and then they just become an absolute dog. And that's something I think
their offensive line is such a scheme that requires good feet, good footwork.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, wow, talk about a good fit that would be.
The only thing is the Eagles' renowned offensive line coach stepped away this year, so I'm interested to see how they look and how their development changes with their linemen, because they are known to out offensive linemen. I think that'd be a really good fit. He's kind of veering on that late first, early second area.
Okay.
Kind of sits around where the Eagles will be picking. I really could see them taking a shot on him, but if not, even early second, there's a lot of teams again, that we're going to need tackle help. He's one of those guys that are not going to be moving inside.
Hmm.
He moved so well, and he looked so good after only playing football for the last 5 years that I can just see some team just really wanting a tackle, and could definitely see him going a little earlier than some.
Pulling the trigger on him in the first. I could see it too. It's just such a valuable position, like having somebody that you can really put on the outside and they're going to be a good contributor for 5+ years. That's like sanity for the mind for 5+ years, knowing you have the outside settled in. Like I can't blame anybody for doing such.
Right.
Um, Back to some of my sleepers. I haven't seen him play in person, so this is a big worry for me. But I've heard a lot of chatter, and he didn't get a combine invite, and that was like a big deal. He was one of the people that a lot of people expected to get a combine invite. Landon Robinson, defensive lineman from Navy, and he's just such an intriguing prospect because his motor is literally endless. The dude doesn't stop. He's ready for every single down whenever you need him. He can do all different types of things. But then again, he's a 5'11", 291 defensive
I mean,
tackle.
that frame, the instant thoughts Aaron Donald every time, right?
Yep, I know. You're like, oh, is this Aaron Donald? And I actually did get to see somebody with similar frame to him play in person when I was with the Giants, Elijah Chapman. He was, I want to say, an undrafted guy for them because he ended up making their roster and played all season. He started with them. I want to say he's still on their roster in the current moment, but he's very similar measurables to him. And I remember meeting him, and when I was driving the van for the team, I met him the first time, and I was like, "Hey, Spencer, nice to meet you." And he's like, "Yeah, my name's Elijah Chapman." I'm like, all right. Where do you play?" And he said, "Defensive lineman." And I literally giggled. I was like, "Nice. What do you play? Like linebacker? Like what's up?" And he's like, "No, I play D line." I was like, "Oh hell no, man." And then I watched him play, and I was like, "No, well, I guess I shouldn't have spoke." The dude was
Yeah.
unbelievable. He could get after the quarterback. He could stop the run. His communication across the line was really good. And, it's just something that, the size, again, it can be such people just discount them because of the size, but I've seen it work before, and I like the kid's motor,
Yeah.
and I like his production.
That's something that I don't think you can overstate a motor, especially at that size. And then something about people from the military academies, man, I just know that they're going to give it their all every single play.
Yep.
And
That work ethic is high.
I could also totally see this being a situation with him, even if he's a UDFA or something where he comes in during camp and you put him on special teams and he's just trying harder than every single person out there makes the team.
Yeah.
And then 3
Yep.
years from now, he just works his way up to actually like getting some rotational stuff. So I like that. I'm also looking at his picture right now. I love how they put him in the whole Navy get up whenever they.
But yeah, I love his aura. I love his energy. I actually happen to know his representation team too, and they talk so highly of him. I'm like, yeah, this guy. I think he might be legit.
Yeah. And, gonna nail interviews too, and teams love that. So.
Yep. There we go.
Awesome. I'm kind of still sticking on my first round, guys. The last one that, like, probably going to be a first rounder that I'm going to talk about that teams aren't super high on his production last year. Keldrick Falk at Auburn. He is going to be his first NFL game. He will be a 20-year-old rookie. He will not be 21 until September, like late September. So you're betting on being able to develop him. But even then, he was a 19-year-old. His sophomore had 7 sacks in the SEC. 6'6", 270. I know 19.
That's not easy to do, man.
19 getting sacks in the SEC. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
He's got great size, but the thing about him is he's kind of a tweener. 6'6", 276. It's like, are you gonna? And it's gonna be depending on your scheme too, right? Like if you're 3-4, I could definitely see him being that 5 technique, 4-eye, 4-3 defense. Going to be a little harder to stick him out on the outside. There are some teams that like that build. I mean, I think of the Chiefs immediately. They prefer that taller, beefier kind of defensive end.
Yeah.
But what he's really talented in, he's going to be a great run stuffer. I'm pretty confident about that. But you're going to have to work on developing some more pass rush moves. He's got a solid burst, but when he gets his extension, he's able to get off blocks pretty easily.
Yeah.
Got a really good.
Was he at the combine?
Yeah, he was at the combine. He didn't do
you get to
many of
watch
the
him?
tests. All he did
Yeah.
was the jumps, which were outstanding. And then he's got an insane arm length. But he's a guy that I like is just a really high floor. I feel like maybe he's not going to be a 12, 13, 14 sack guy, but I could see him being a consistent 8, 9, 10 sack guy, but still sitting on the outside, give you really great run defense.
Yeah.
Which is, especially as teams start running a lot more recently, can be super valuable.
Yeah.
But yeah, just
And
really
having 8-10 sacks is not that is somebody that teams offenses have to worry about.
right.
So
Not yet.
that is absolutely worth it.
But he gets in the right team, the right team gets developed a little bit. He could become a solid pass rusher, but excited about him to see where he goes, and just being so young already, and
All right. Who else do you have on your underrated guy? Give me one or two more underrated sleeper guys.
Okay, I'll skip to my super underrated guys that I feel obligated to mention. One guy, and you weren't at the Senior Bowl, but I'm sure you saw a lot of the highlights. I have to mention it, Tyron Montgomery out of John Carroll, Division III. They're in the same conference where I played at. This guy didn't play football until 2 years ago. He was actually on their basketball team.
Yeah.
And then their coach, the football coach at John Carroll, said, "Hey man, I'd really love to see what you got. Can you just come try out?" Guy shows up and just starts cooking everybody on the field at receiver. Has an insane year in Division III. Was up for the Division III Player of the Year award, the Gagliardi, and then this guy goes to the Senior Bowl down in Mobile, and is just, I guess, Division I athletes cooking dudes. There's highlights of him against Jermod McCoy, for example, and he's beaten those guys too. I don't think he won't get picked, but I am really excited. He'll get picked up by somebody as UDFA, and I'm really excited to see what happens with that. He is going to be 25 too as well, though. Do I have super high expectations for him? Of course not. He's a UDFA guy, but really story to see a Division III player go out and have production against guys like that. And I mean, you never know. You see, there's like one or two Division III guys. It feels like every draft that just come out of nowhere and then eventually make a great career.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I could see it too. I have heard a decent amount about him, and I really love his story as well. And man, I think that there's no chance he doesn't get some camp opportunity, like you said. And I again don't think there's any way that he walks away from camp without having an official roster spot somewhere. May not be with the team he was at camp with, but he should have a roster spot somewhere.
Or even just
Speaking
practice
of,
squad, like
yeah, and that's an opportunity, and a practice squad, you can make the most out of that and do something with that. Speaking of good prospects that are a little bit older, another one of my sleeper guys that the media will not mention is my guy Lewis Moore from Indiana University, a second team All-American. He is 25 years old, which is that's a worry. That's a worry. But when I tell you he is instantly ready to be a starter on any NFL defense as a safety, nickel option, oh man, he can get all over in coverage. And he's got ball skills of a receiver because he played receiver when he was in his early days of college, and not a lot of people know that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so the dude, he knows the routes, he knows where the guys are trying to get to, and his hands are amazing. And I think that he seriously is going to be such an impactful player at the NFL level. And I'm thinking that he's going to end up around that high-end third round, fourth round pick. But personally, if I really needed a safety, I would have no hesitation taking him in late second round just because I know he could be a start now guy impact.
And I'm super high on just experience, especially like at safety.
Winning.
Right. Yeah. And
And
playing
playing
line.
winning football is really valuable, and teams take value in that. When you're a part of a team that knows how to win football and you're a part of a winning culture, that translates.
Being from Indiana, I watched more IU than probably any other team I certainly watched IU more than any other team this year. And he's one of those guys that you just is always in the right spot at the right
Mm-hmm.
time. And some people think that that's just luck. It's not just luck. Those kind of players just they know where to be. And I mean, had 6 interceptions last year on a loaded defense, and then of course won a national championship. So I think that helped his stock a lot. Just
I
being
agree.
just being on national television. Um, but that's also I didn't know he played offense. That's really do you know did he play both sides at the same
Yeah, he did.
teams love are going to love that too. That's gritty.
Yep,
But yeah,
he's ready to go. He's ready to go, man.
Lou Moore is an awesome player, and the only thing about him I worry about a little bit is that he, is not going to be the craziest athlete. Playing if he's
Yeah,
trying to play a deep third or something, we'll see. You got some speedster out there. The only thing I worry about is his catch-up speed.
yeah.
Besides that,
That was
he,
one of the issues. His are you familiar? You're familiar, of course, with the RAS athletic
yeah, yeah, yeah,
scores.
yeah, yeah. Of course,
His
that's the only thing the Colts
they
do when they draft is look at the RA.
they just read those and then draft them. Oh man, yeah, they just put out Lou Moore's numbers and whatever, dude. I'm telling you,
Yeah,
don't take any acknowledgement of that and just know that this kid can play ball.
right, right. Love that. Any IU player, I'm all for.
Yeah, so now that we've kind of covered some of our underrated guys, we can circle back to some at the end if there are some that we are
Sure.
desperate to cover. Now let's talk a little bit more about some guys that a lot of people seem to be a lot higher on, and we're just like, hey, I don't know. I don't know if I take them that high
Yeah.
because that's how I feel about some of these guys. I don't know if I take them in first round, but I mean, if he's there in the second, okay, okay.
First one, I've got, and a lot of people, and I've seen in media kind of have a similar opinion, but I'll mention it anyways, is Caden Proctor. And this might just be a situation where a guy has such high expectations coming out of high school as like a 5-star top 30 prospect, where
Yeah,
he's still a solid player, but your expectations were just so high that you feel let
yeah,
down by it.
I get
That
what you
being
mean.
said, his tape last year was not necessarily the best. When your biggest highlight of the year is taking a screen pass as an offensive lineman, that might not necessarily be the best thing. But he's another guy where, again, it's going to be a lot about what team gets them and how well they are developing offensive line because he's got the size. And I was really happy to see him come in and measure in at 352 rather than what people think and that he was listed for at Bama. Like he was playing upwards of like 370, I
Yeah,
believe. And it's just there's a really sweet spot in the NFL for on offensive tackle, whereas Monroe
yeah,
Freeland's on the short edge. He's just kind of a little too big. So we'll see how
yeah,
things work with his body and things. But he's I don't want to dig on him too hard. He's an insane body. And once he gets his hands on you, you're probably not getting away from him. But we'll see. Because these defensive ends in the NFL are so shifty and just so athletic that I worry about him with speed rushers, especially. Um,
yeah,
but I could see he's probably going to be a late first guy. Before the season started, though, he was mocked in the top 10. So I think teams are just a little bit disappointed with how things went last year. And then Alabama just not having a run game either didn't help him either in any
yeah,
aspect. But again, he's still going to probably be a first round pick, but just maybe a guy that I wouldn't be as excited about if my team took him because he's going to be a developmental project guy that you might not like first game week one. If whoever drafts him and he's going up against a good edge rusher, it might look a little rough. Is all.
yeah, yeah. We'll see. We'll see. I can understand that the caution behind him, and I did notice just in general how much it seemed like the consensus opinion of him just all of a sudden went from he's by far and away the best offensive lineman prospect in this draft to Well, let's take a look at some things. So, yeah, I can understand that. One of my concerns is Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end out of Oregon.
Okay.
I think that he is a phenomenal receiving threat. Obviously, he's 6'3", 241. He's 21, so he is younger still. He's not old by any means. Something about the light bodied tight ends that have a history or a their experience is playing more of that receiving tight end role. It's always a big adjustment going to the NFL just because it requires you to have the right fit where a team doesn't ask you to do certain things. Because, for example, if you look at Travis Kelsey early in his career, and he was just a receiver. That's all he
Never
could
was
do.
blocking a soul.
No, he
No.
wasn't trying to, and it caused a lot of problems for them early on. He had to figure out how to do that, and that's a skill that to play tight end and to get as many snaps as it takes to be an impactful player on that team. Now you have to be able to block as well. That's another thing that I've noticed with the Bengals issue is they don't really have a tight end that does both right now. We have Mike Gesicki, who you know is just our fourth receiver. He's just playing slot when he's out there. And then we have Drew Sample who can block, but the brother can't catch. If you put honey on his hands and the ball stuck to the honey, it still wouldn't stick. So it's just such a gray area, I feel like, with tight end, and you have to be so versatile, in my opinion. So I have some questions about him, especially with people taking him, and what I'm seeing, people are saying they should take him in the top 15, top 10-ish, and I'm like, I don't know about
Yeah,
that.
I'm with you on that because again, I do worry about the weight, especially his arm length is solid.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that one thing that I will say is maybe he's not going to be a super high pick because you look at like guys like Tyler Warren because he was a great receiver, but also is a great blocker as well.
Absolutely.
I think that if you do take Kenyon Sadiq, no matter what, he's going to be productive in some fashion. But at the same
Yeah.
time, you're going to have to use him very, very specifically at first, whether it is just throwing him in the slot or putting him in at H-back and letting him, seat between the guard and the tackle or something and get a mismatch with a linebacker.
Yeah.
But I do believe that his weight especially is going to hurt him, blocking, and that you might have to do a lot of double teams with a tackle, whereas you're probably not going to be comfortable leaving him one-on-one with the defensive end.
No. No.
But his receiving skills are unquestionable. I think he's going to be
They're
productive.
unbelievable.
He's going to be productive, and he's an insane athlete. Everybody knows that. Has the highest RAS score of I think any tight end ever out of the
Yeah.
draft. I think.
I want to say
Uh,
you're right.
but I agree, the blocking is going to be tough, and he's going to have to put on some weight. We'll see how that affects his athleticism, if at all.
Yeah.
But
Because I think he could very well lead the rookies in receiving yards as a tight end. I'm not saying that I don't like him as a prospect. It's just more about taking him so high.
yeah,
If I'm taking you as a tight end that high, I'm gonna need you to be able to do
do
all the
everything.
things I want you to do,
Yeah,
like Tyler Warren was able to do last year for the Colts. So that's just a little hesitation, just a little
yeah.
hesitation.
Other one that I've got, and this guy's tape is insane. There's no question about it, and he looks great. But when you're talking about first round talents and using a first round pick on a player, it is a huge, huge investment, especially when you get that 5th-year option with first rounders only as well. I'm looking at Jordan Tyson, and again, the tape is crazy. Everybody's going to talk about his injuries, though. He comes from an athlete family. His brother's on the Cavs. And so he's going to be a great athlete, but he's had 3 different serious injuries since he's been in college. He's had knee injuries, he's had a collarbone injury, and a hamstring injury. I mean, dude's got an injury in like every section of his body, it feels like. And
Yeah,
that's worrisome. And there's been guys that have injury troubles in college and then come out and don't have any. I mean, you think Frank Gore, when he was in college, he had a bunch of injuries, and then dude didn't miss like any games in the NFL. So it's just a hesitation thing. I'm not digging on his talent. It's clear and evident, obviously. But if I'm in the draft room and I'm looking at a draft board and I've got Jordan Tyson there as a receiver, and then like, who are the guys near him? Like Omar Cooper is probably kind of near him. Mekhi Lemon's near him as well. That's just going to be a notch to go against him, or maybe I take the other guy above him just because you feel more comfortable in making the investment. Because that's what drafting is, right? So he's going to go in the first round. Some team's going to take the flyer on him. But if I'm an NFL GM, I'm super high on Omar Cooper. Like, that's someone that I might throw in before Jordan Tyson. I know that's a crazy thought, but yeah, Jordan Tyson's a crazy player. Just as an NFL, like from a GM mindset, that's the only thing I worry about.
I can already see Brandon Beane in Buffalo calling him on draft night. Mm-hmm. I can already see it.
Right.
That's such a team that would make that call.
And he's a dude too,
because he's amazing, like you said. He's a dog.
He could be the first receiver taken. That's what.
Yeah.
You never know. He could also be the guy that falls to 25. It's dependent.
You never know.
Yeah, and however the medicals come out, you don't really get that as much in the media, but the teams know, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with him, and I hope to Lord that he is a crazy player, because at his peak he could be a top 10 receiver in the NFL, but it's just one of those ones where injuries kind of unfortunately can hurt your draft stock.
Yeah, and your confidence and all of that good stuff. Another one of my guys that I am not as high on is Peter Woods from Clemson, D-line, 6'3", 310. He's got the numbers to the physical numbers to, think that he looks the NFL part, but I haven't seen him play in person. I haven't seen any of this in person. I've just watched loosely on games and, what I see and read. And, for his, what I saw in games is that I saw him get to and around and through, but never finish. He was never finishing. He could never get the job done. If you can't finish in college, how are you going to finish against these grown, massive specimens of humans in the NFL? And that's been my biggest issue with especially defensive linemen these last few years, is having confidence in people that don't produce. His production just hasn't really been there. So this is another person that if he's there in the second round or something like that, then obviously I would tell somebody to take him. And, he's a great value pick there. But there's a lot of mocks that have him going in the top 15. A lot of people saying top 10, 15. And you'd have to pay me a lot of money to take him in the top 15.
He's a guy that he's kind of like Caden Proctor in my mind, where the start of the year he was a top 5 in a lot of people's mock drafts. And something that concerned me about him is I feel like in the Clemson games that I watched, they obviously were ranked like a top 3 team at the start of the year, I believe, with the preseason rankings. But the second that their season fell through and you knew they weren't going to be a playoff team, I just don't feel like you saw it from them anymore. And it maybe, I don't want to look into things too much. I've never talked to the guy, right? But it's just one of those things where the fact that they weren't competing at the highest level anymore, did that kind of alter his mind? Did he kind of book it in for who knows? But he didn't have great production.
Out and then just saying his agency tell him, hey, just
stay healthy, just get to the draft.
Stay healthy, and you'll be all right.
Four, though, had great tape, in my opinion. Last year just wasn't as good. And could he be also getting hurt by the fact that teams or people just weren't watching Clemson as much because they weren't competitive this year? Maybe, but I'm with you on that. He's probably going to be one of those late first guys, or if it is early second and you really need an interior guy, please by all means take him. But the lack of production last year is going to hurt him a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have one more guy that you have some questions.
I did, and I had Ty Simpson on here.
Dan Orlovsky might be listening. Dan Orlovsky might come get you.
Bro, I cannot listen to Dan Orlovsky one more time. counter his own argument. Like, gosh, what dude knows ball, but man, he makes himself look like an idiot sometimes. And
Yeah, yeah.
the
I
thing
feel
that
like they
I
might. I think that
see,
might be in his contract that he is supposed to make himself like an idiot
right.
sometimes.
And the thing with Ty Simpson with me is, I want to talk about some positives first. Is that when teams were going up against Alabama, you knew they were about to throw the ball, right? Like he did not have any help with a run game whatsoever
No.
last year, and so that put him in a hard spot. But there's some clips of him trying to fit balls in tight windows and use a lot of arm strength, and it doesn't look comfortable to me. Like it almost looks like there's a play against IU when I was watching that game where it almost looked like he was trying to shot put it in there, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
sometimes it just doesn't look natural, especially when he's on the run outside of the pocket. I feel like he tries to do too much and he loses more of his form. When he sits in the pocket, he's got a solid throwing motion, but the more that he moves around, it looks a little rougher. And with quarterback, it's one of those things you're going to be taking a flyer, and he's with it being there's really only Mendoza at the top. I'm pretty confident some team is going to take him in the first round. I would not, but every single year there's the top end quarterbacks that get taken like top five, right? But then there's always that guy that slips
Yeah.
in like 25 to 32, and it's usually a team trading up because they want to get that fifth-year option on a quarterback.
Yeah.
I think Ty is going to be one of those where it's going to be like pick 22, 23, and maybe a team like the Jets or the Cardinals didn't take a quarterback with their first pick,
Yeah.
but they've got a little bit more leeway there because they have some picks in their back pocket and maybe trade back up to the first to get them.
Yeah. Absolutely, I can
I
see
think
it.
he could be solid if he's got a good system around him. But if he goes to a team that's not going to have pieces around him, he's probably going to struggle a lot early on. And
Yeah,
I
I
only
feel like
really
he's
brought
one
him
of those
up
quarterbacks
because,
that it requires a perfect situation.
yeah, I really only brought him. If the media hadn't been talking about him being above Mendoza in the last few weeks, I probably wouldn't have brought him up. But I couldn't let that slide without saying anything
Couldn't let
about
that
it.
go. And, I'm not gonna get carried away on this take because if I do, it's gonna take forever. I think in a normal year, in a QB heavier draft, I would have a lot of problem with Mendoza being the top quarterback. I think that he is by far and away this top prospect in this draft as a quarterback, and he's what the Raiders need.
Right.
I'm all for that. But when at the beginning of the season, when the first mock draft started coming out, I had a rage fit when I saw Mendoza going first. I was like, I don't know what I'm seeing that I don't know if I'm seeing why everybody thinks he should be the first quarterback taken overall. And granted, like I said, I've grown to that point that I understand that he absolutely should be the number one overall
Right.
pick. But I do think that this is just one of those years that it's the situation that requires it, not like when Joe Burrow was coming out or when Bryce Young was coming out, and you're like, oh, this guy is him, you know. So
Yeah,
just a little tangent.
yeah, I think. I mean, think back 2 years ago. If he's in the draft with Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, where's he go?
Mm-hmm.
10 to 15, maybe.
Yeah, definitely a lot lower there.
The
Because
thing I
if you
do,
think about it, the draft that Burrow went in, Hurts. He was second round, right? In the second
Mhm.
round.
Yeah,
I'm not saying I think Mendoza is a better prospect than Jalen Hurts was as a quarterback, but Jalen Hurts was winning. You know, he had a winning resume, and he was putting up solid stats and numbers, but he fell that way. That's just a tangent. Anyways, let's get back to the main point. Talk about let's each give one guy that we are super duper high on that we think people are already high on them, and we're just kind of giving them a cosign of approval on a guy that people are already high.
yeah. I've already talked to you about this before, but my guy, I'm biased with this, but it's going to be Dylan Thieneman. Um, I'm a Central Indy boy, and he's from Central Indiana, so I'm a little biased on that. But I knew when I was watching Oregon and Purdue when he was at Purdue that he stood out athletically, I did not expect him to show up to the combine and do what he did a couple weeks ago. And that was kind of just like the icing on the cake for me because he looks insane on film. And he was probably projected like late first area. But I'm at the point now where, like, if you need a safety, and, Caleb Downs, obviously, number one safety, no question about that.
Yeah.
But let's say Caleb Downs is picked higher than people think, and he goes like 5 or 6, right? And you really, really need a safety, and you're sitting there at 10, 11, 12, like Cincinnati, who could use a safety. Do you take a flyer on Dylan Thieneman a little earlier than some teams might? Personally, I would, because I think no matter where he goes, you stick him in your back, your back of your defense, and he's going to be able to play true safety more than some of these other guys will. Like, talking about Caleb Downs, he's probably going to be a box guy or a nickel kind of guy, and that can be very impactful. But if you really need someone to sit in the back of your defense and play coverage
Over the top.
the top, I personally think
middle.
he's going to be the best over-the-top safety in this draft, and I'm really excited to watch him next year at whatever team that he goes to. A lot of people are saying Minnesota to replace Harrison Smith just because he's another white safety, but I think he would be excellent with Brian Flores in Minnesota. And that'd mean he'd have to, get picked in like the 20s, I believe. But gosh, I would love to see him in Minnesota with Flores so much.
Yeah, we'll see how it all shakes out. But I agree that, he was one that I really didn't know much about going into this pre-draft process. And the more that I've seen from him and read about him, I'm like, wow, you know what? I don't hate the people saying this guy might go top 15. I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. Because I agree. I do think that he could do a lot for you and just instantly be somebody that cannot, totally eliminate, but at least make the quarterback think when they're thinking about throwing over the top and over the middle. So that's a pretty good guy there. I like that. One of my guys, I am extremely confident this guy is going to be a hit in the NFL, is Jake Galladay from University of Cincinnati. I, again, have gotten to see this guy in person up close, and I'm telling you, oh, yeah, he's about it. This guy is a linebacker that can set the edge, that can drop back into coverage, can play the middle linebacker, need him to play Mike, play Sam. Oh, man, this dude did everything. I loved him. 6'4", 239, really smart guy, really reads the field well. He's got extreme production over these last few years, getting over 100 tackles last season. I want to say he had like 11, or I don't want to get this number wrong, so let me make sure I get it right. But I know he had a decent amount of tackles for losses last year.
6 TFLs, 3.5 sacks last year.
Yeah, dude, he put up some solid numbers just last year alone. So I was really impressed with that, and then I got to see him run some drills at his pro day, and he's got the size that fits the frame of an NFL linebacker. So.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that a team like Denver or Jacksonville could use him, with both of them losing significant linebacker pieces over the last offseason. I think he just provides so much versatility to a linebacker room. So I'm extremely high on him.
Those are great sack numbers for being an interior backer.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know a lot about Jake Galladay, but I'm looking at his photo right now, and sometimes you just look at a guy and he's got like it sounds weird, but he's got an NFL neck. This dude's neck.
Yes, it is. It is.
He's just got, I could see it. He's got that line. He's got that AJ Hawk, like, massive head and neck, dude. Holy cow.
That Luke Kuechly neck.
Yes.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I just pulled up a picture to it. I know exactly what you're talking about.
There's no stats on that, but if you measure in a guy's necks, there's something to that.
Yep. And then, he was standing, him and another prospect that I am affiliated with is Jack Dingle. I'm pretty high on him. I think he's probably at best going to be around round 4, possibly at the end of round 3, but round 4 or 5. But I was watching the pro day for both of these guys, Jake and Jack, and I was standing next to both of them, like literally sandwiched in the middle of them. And I'm just looking at them like, God damn, you guys are both going to the NFL. I'm telling you right now. Yeah, man. Well, yeah, you got any other major topics or, prospects you want to talk about real quick?
The last guy that this is actually, I'm not even going to talk about a guy. The last topic that I want to touch on that has to do with the NFL draft is rookie pay scales and how that can influence how teams draft. Okay. So each pick is going to gradually become less expensive as you go through the first round, right? First pick is going to be massive. By the time you get to 32, not as much. And then that's going to increase every single year as well. So just for example, let's say your first overall pick, let's say it's 10, then it goes to 12, 13, 14, so on and so forth. That has a big impact on how teams draft, especially when you consider positions. It's not as big as a deal as you get into the later rounds because the contracts aren't going to be as big. But at the top of the draft, when you look at running back, you look at safety, you look at guard, the way that these contracts scale up is going to influence a lot. Because, for example, let's say Jeremiah Love. Everybody loves him. Everybody knows he's going to be an insane player. It seems like one of those guys that there's almost no risk that he's going to be a bust. And I'll knock on wood, but if you pick him, Arizona's at 3, they need a running back. Let's say they take him at 3. By the time he's in that 4th year, I've done the research. His contract would already be making him based on what the contracts are right now. It'd be the 5th highest paid running back in the league on a rookie.
He'd be top 5. Yeah.
And then that doesn't even think about if you take that 5th year option, then he'll be that next year will be another top 5 paid running back. And do teams really want a rookie being one of the highest, or not rookie, want someone on a rookie deal being one of the highest paid at their positions? Like, what if, God forbid, he is a bust, right? And then you're paying someone that, at a position of what is deemed lesser value, top contract at that position. So that's just something to consider. And Jeremiah Love, running back, is one of the easiest translatable position from college to NFL. He could come out his rookie year and be a top 5 running back, and then you don't look like an idiot at all for taking him. But that's just something to consider that teams think about.
But there's a but, yeah.
And that's just something to think about. And sometimes you got a guy that's just too insane not to take. Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, right? But just something to consider. And I don't worry about that really with Jeremiah Love. But I think it's something that the regular average fan maybe doesn't think about. They're like, oh, we need a running back. Why didn't we take Jeremiah Love?
Yeah, you got to think about all of it. Yeah.
Right. And I just try to always have a GM frame of mind when I think about the draft. So that's just that's draft relatable that I thought was worth mentioning.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thing, Cox. If there is a day that my goal of becoming a director of player personnel or a general manager in the NFL, I'm giving you my first phone call, brother. You are going to be my first phone call, brother. Thank you so much for hopping on this call with me and doing this podcast. And, this special draft episode, man, the people, they got to feel like they walked away from this learning something and feeling more informed. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do the prep and give me all this great information that you've been working on, man. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, my friend. Excited to see what happens and excited to see what you do next, man.
Yes, sir. Appreciate that, man. And thank you all to all my listeners and fans and friends and family, whatever you want to call it. We'll be back next time with another episode. My next guest, I have 3 guests lined up for you guys, and I'm telling you, you're not going to want to miss it. So thank you again to Cox for joining me on Ball Talk with Boyd, and I'll see you guys next time.